Hey everybody, how are you today? I hope that you are doing wonderful. I'm having an okay day. I finally had the time to go out and do a very proper Plein Airpril painting. And I even have a little bit of time to actually do a voiceover. So that's what I'm doing. And I really enjoyed painting today. The weather was really nice. I did just sit in my car and it did get a little bit stuffy. I think it was about 75 or 76 degrees Fahrenheit today. And even though I had the windows down in my car, it did just get a little bit stuffy because I can't roll my windows down all the way, or my dogs would jump out as soon as they saw another dog. So I had them down a few inches, got a little bit of air in there, but it was actually tougher on my dogs than it was on me. So I don't know if I'll be able to take them car painting when it really gets warm outside. Probably not, because it's hard on them and they don't understand. So I am breaking out the gouache today. And I honestly think that gouache is one of the best mediums for plein air painting because it has all the qualities that I love about watercolor and oil painting all rolled into one. So the watercolor-ish qualities that I really like about gouache are just that it dries very quickly and you can just use water with it, so you don't have to have any kind of solvent with you. And then what I like about it in terms of how it's like oil, I actually like that it's really opaque. And so I don't have to do a lot of pre-planning like I do with watercolor, because with watercolor, it's really, really important that you start with your lightest values, your brightest colors, and then you have to add all of the dark things in that actually bring structure to your composition later. So I like that I can be really, really spontaneous with it, but that I don't have to have any kind of solvent. And I find it just really easy to work with. And I am just using that same pocket box that I had used for the oil paintings earlier. But you can see that I have this little gray tray inside. And I actually found someone on Etsy to 3D print this little tray for me. So it's made out of plastic. I really love it. And I just knew that I was going to probably be using this little pocket box for different mediums. So when I use oil paint, I just use the pocket box as it was designed, and I use the little palette insert for my oil paint. But of course, oil and water doesn't mix so very well. So instead of trying to put a water-based medium on that surface that I also use for oil-based mediums, I decided that I would have this little tray made. And so I'm very, very thankful that this person, and I will link their Etsy shop below just in case you're interested. Sometimes I have to think of kind of unique solutions to some of the particular problems that I create for myself. So I feel like everything always needs to be customized in some way. And usually I try to find a way just to do it myself if I need some kind of customization, but I struggled with this problem for quite a while before realizing I could just have someone 3D print this thing. And so I kind of gave them my idea, sketched some things out, gave them some measurements, and they were able to do an amazing job. And I'm just so thankful for that. And I think that using my pocket box for gouache, or even maybe for watercolor, I think I actually like that better than using it for oil, because I really think that I struggle to paint on such a small format and in such a tight situation, whether I'm in my car or I'm actually outdoors. I just don't really enjoy oil painting outside of my studio, to be quite honest. As much as I would like to go out with all my oils and paint outside, because oils are, of course, beautiful, but the workflow, I find it very, very challenging. And sometimes I think you just have to accept that. So right now I'm just adding a really nice warm kind of reddish orange undertone because it was a very sunny day. I did this in the late afternoon So there was a blue sky, but I'm not going to have much of that showing here. It's just kind of peeking through, and I have a lot of trees in the distance. I parked my car at the park where I pretty much have done all of my plein air paintings in the last couple of days, and where I usually go, because it's just, you know, it's close to where I live. I just go there with my dogs usually, whether I'm walking or sitting in my car. And it's nice and pretty. There's my complaints about it, of course, that it's a little bit too artificial and man-made, but whatever. Today I think it worked because I was actually focusing more on just the road in front of me where I was parked. So it didn't bother me too much. Like, I didn't try to feel like I was out in the wilderness. So I like that nice warm undertone because I think that it just sets the stage for me to create a painting that feels very warm. And the other thing too that I like about gouache is that you can do a lot of just kind of troubleshooting and guesswork, and if things don't work out, it's opaque enough and it dries fast enough that you can pretty easily just go over things that you don't love. So I went ahead and blocked in all of that nice green grass. We still don't have any leaves on the trees. I'm sure those will be coming soon. But I kind of like this time of year. I like the times of year where there's not that many leaves on the trees, because then I can just focus on the lines, the branches. I feel like that brings a lot of structure to a painting. It's actually more challenging when you have green grass and green trees and green everything. Then you have to find ways to kind of differentiate all those greens and organize them in a way that makes sense. So now I'm doing a little bit of dry brushing of a violet on top of that bright orange undertone that I laid down. And I feel like that will work well to create the effect of light shining on a cement road. I mentioned before that I find cement and concrete things really difficult to paint because the way that I actually see them in life is like they're just gray and kind of dead looking. So I have to really push that a lot beyond what I'm actually observing, which in a way that bothers me. And I think that's just my nature because I kind of grew up as being the artsy kid that really just wanted to try to recreate reality through my art, and I never really saw the value in trying to be imaginative. I know that sounds a little bit weird for someone who describes themselves as an art kid, but yeah, I really was more into observing and drawing realistically all through my childhood and teen years, and even when I went to college, that was really my focus. I wasn't really focused on, like, you know, pushing colors or moving things around. I just wanted to observe. And I'm trying to push myself a little bit more now. And I think especially when you're doing plein air work and you're trying to be very spontaneous. And so it would probably work for me to paint things just the way that I really see them, but I would have to spend a lot more time on it and be a lot more nuanced. So for a quick plein air painting, I think it really helps to push yourself to loosen up and get creative with your use of color. And now I'm just blocking in some yellow on top of the green to emphasize a little bit more where the sun is really hitting, and then allowing some of the greens to appear as though they're in shadow, cast shadows by trees. And again, I think it was around 5:30 p.m. It was after I got off of work that I really quick just went out to paint. So there were lots of nice cast shadows all around. And this brush set I absolutely love. It's by Jack Richardson, and I should probably just link all this stuff below, even though, I don't know, never mind. I'll link the stuff below because people can make their own decisions about what they buy and who they buy it from. But I really like these brushes because they're great for plein air painting. They have really nice short handles, which is another challenge that I had in trying to paint in my car with oil paints, because all of my oil painting brushes have really long handles. And the way that I have my camera set up, I've kind of described it before, but it's sort of just on this weird flexible arm thing, and I've clamped that to my emergency brake to the right of me, right by my cup holders, and I don't have a lot of space between where my camera is kind of hanging and my brushes, so having really long-handled brushes just doesn't work very well for trying to paint in the car. So, and really for plein air painting in general, these are just really nice and portable, and they're specifically for water media like watercolor and gouache. So I will link those below. There's different places to buy them. I'll put the Amazon links below, but I know that you can probably find these at any like art supply store too. And now my instinct was to paint the trunks of these trees dark, but the sun was kind of behind me, and so the sun was really illuminating the trunks of these trees. So I'm going in actually really light at first, and then just I'm adding a few spots of shadow. And then in the background, I'm just more or less putting in some dry brush texture back there just to give the impression of trees in the distance without actually articulating individual trees. So I'm only actually painting a few trees that are kind of in the midground that I can see pretty clearly. And already I'm thinking that this looks pretty good. I think that I end up doing some things that I didn't really like later on, because I think that I could have stopped painting a lot sooner than I really did. But another thing I really like about gouache and working on a small format and working really quickly is that I feel like I have a lot more room for nuance. I was really struggling to get my paintings to a place that I really liked in terms of it, you know, having a lot of nuanced color, a lot of depth and things like that. And I also was really just struggling because I was looking out the window of my car. My compositions were a little bit almost too constrained, and so I wasn't getting a lot of depth in them. And I feel like working in gouache, for some reason, I think it may be the smaller brushes, the more control that I have, the paint isn't quite as thick, so I just had more room to kind of include everything that I wanted to. And I don't really like to use the word detail because it's not really detail. I like to either describe it as, you know, nuances, like nuances in depth, nuances in color variation, things like that. Oh, here's what I didn't like. I started kind of scumbling in some yellowish blue, and I know why I did it, but it doesn't make any sense, and it was just not really working. So in the end, it's not too bad because I'll just go in with some trees to kind of bring this all back together, but I guess I was kind of experimenting with that and I didn't really like it. So just ignore this disaster that I'm creating right here. It looked really nice before I did this. Let's just pretend that never happened. Keep it simple. Like I said, I started just kind of overthinking things, and I left myself a little bit too much time. I did this painting actually a lot faster than I did any of those oil paintings. I spent between 40 minutes to probably almost an hour on some of those tiny little oil paintings, and I gotta be honest, I didn't really like any of them very much. So I was able to work a lot faster and get a composition in the end that I liked a lot more because I was able to go back and kind of correct some of the mistakes that I felt I made. So now I'm going in and adding just a little bit more structure for some of those distant trees. And now you can kind of see my palette on screen. It's not a lot of space to work, but another nice thing about gouache is that you can work on top of old mixtures pretty easily. Gouache can be really difficult to reactivate once it dries, but that has its own, I guess, advantages built in with it because I ran out of space on my palette, my mixing palette, pretty quickly, but because those things dried, It's kind of easy just to add mixes on top and they're not too impacted by those mixes underneath. I think that the road with all that kind of sunlight hitting it and there's just one cast shadow just so it's not too much light, I think that provides a really nice contrast with the rest of the painting, especially with all the greens. So I guess that's another advantage to just allowing yourself to be a little bit more loose and subjective with the color. You can build up contrasts that help your composition overall. Alright, so I'm pretty much done here, just adding a little bit of sunlight to this shrub that is on this median, or whatever you call that green space that's separating the two sides of the road. I am kind of running out of paint too, but I know that I'm close enough to the end of this painting that there's no point in adding gouache to my palette. And like I said, gouache can be really difficult to reactivate. It's not exactly like the way that you reconstitute watercolor, because you can reconstitute it, but it's hard to get that consistency that you have when it's just straight out of the tube, which I find really preferable when I'm painting. So I try to only squeeze out as much as I'm going to use in one session. So at this point, I'm kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel as far as my paints go, and I'm just adding a little bit more structure to some of the trees and to this shrub in the midground, and that's really going to do it. I think maybe it's a little bit busy in the background. I could have left that all really a lot simpler and this composition would have worked. But overall, it was just a really nice painting experience. It was nice to be able to just sit in my car with my dogs, even though I know they maybe were bored and there wasn't enough air movement for them. And like I said, I don't leave my car running if I paint in my car. So I can tolerate it, but may not be something I can bring my dogs in on all that much as it starts to get warmer outside. Just adding a little bit of texture into the pavement, a little bit of texture into this grass over here. And this is done. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this and hope that you are able to get some plein air painting done. I know it's really hard with the social distancing. I guess I feel very fortunate to live in a rural area where there's just not that many people anyway, so social distancing isn't a huge challenge here. So I hope that you're doing well. I hope that you're hanging in there and taking care of yourself and making time for art.